He was a graduate student in physics with a motorcycle. You know, it was exciting. I really fell in love with him very fast. It took him a little longer to figure out. I think to fall in love with anybody, he was kind of nervous about commitment. We loved each other a lot. My husband was only with hospice a couple of days, and it wasn't even in Ithaca. It was in Rochester. He was in the hospital in Rochester and had a very quick downturn, and so kind of got stuck in the hospital because it was too traumatic for his body to move him at all. So I just said, we'll stay here. And the hospice at Strong Hospital in Rochester came into his hospital room right there and kind of took care of things.
My sister and I were taking care of my mother. It was, just being able to go to Wegmans, to the grocery store, was, it was like going to Disneyland. You're just so secluded and cut off from everybody.
I got involved with hospice because I had a very close friend in my 20s, in our 20s, who were both the same age, who had brain cancer. And through that experience, I learned that there was a really important place, a really important role for people who weren't family members in someone's life as they approached the end of their life. And I hadn't thought about that before. I thought sort of dying as a private thing.
Medicare requires that 5% of all direct patient care comes from volunteers. It's considered a cost savings. It's our contribution to the hospice in this community. We here in Tompkins County, in 2012 had 17.5% rather than just 5%, which is pretty awesome. There's 110 volunteers that are active right now, and they just keep coming.
And Medicare assumes that their daily stipend is not going to cover all the care, that they anticipate that hospices will raise 10% of the funds that they need to operate. And we're very fortunate in our community, and we raise around 17 or 18% of the funds, of our operating funds, from our community, which the community here is exceptionally generous, and so we're very grateful for that.
Right now, what I do is I'm actually signed up to do a monthly meal shift, and because I work during the day, it's a dinner shift on Wednesday nights. So it's a lot of, bringing dinner at the right time and drinks and a little chatting. And sometimes that's with the resident, and sometimes it's with people who are visiting.
After I did volunteer training, I did bereavement training. And after I did bereavement training, I was asked if I'd like to run or help facilitate bereavement groups. You know, of course, we talk about what we've lost, and all the women in the group either lost a spouse or a partner, and we talk about that some, but we also talk a lot about, okay, now we have a new life, and where are we going to go with it? So now I've named my group Standing in Our New Lives. I don't know, I assume that many of the people that there were other women like me who really want to make the best of it, you know? I didn't want to just live a life thinking about him. I wanted to bring that love along with me, but also create new things for myself and make a really good life for myself.
Our bereavement program for a hospice our size is very rich. We have a lot going on. These programs are open to everyone in the community, regardless of whether or not their loved one received hospice care. And sometimes knowing that we're going to support, that we are supporting and are going to continue to support a loved one is helpful to the person who's dying. Some people worry about the people that they're going to leave behind, and it can be a comfort to them to know that those folks are going to have some support in their lives.
I do in-home service, either in the patient's home or in the facility at Hospicare, nursing homes, wherever they need me. And I do whatever the patient needs. We have some restrictions. We're not allowed to, for instance, do any lifting of any kind, lift the patient. But we can do light housekeeping. Quite often the patient just needs some stimulation. They need someone to talk to.
I've heard from many people that they feel that they, having experienced a volunteer in their lives and the difference that that volunteer made, that it inspires them to go out and do that themselves. And other people, I think, can come from having other kind of significant experiences that suddenly orient them to doing something really, really important and personal, which is what ultimately volunteering is.
There's one woman in a nursing home who's been on hospice service quite a long time, and I just realized she must be so in love with her volunteer. He goes and sees her twice a week, just about every week. Once in a while he might, he's sick or something. He visits her so often, and they have true, deep friendship.
There's some deep friendships that are made between patients and volunteers, and it's really difficult when I have to make that call and tell them that the patient died. I don't know a lot of the details sometimes about those friendships, but I hear how much they care about people. Obviously if a patient is in the place where they can talk and engage, it's a lot easier. But even the patients that are unable to talk at this point for whatever reason, and volunteers just sit and hold a hand and are a presence, there's a deep connection made there too. Most volunteers feel that it's an honor to be with someone at this point in their life, and so I think that alone allows a connection to happen.
It's actually a blessing and a privilege to be able to spend time with somebody at the end of their life. Quite often, most of the time, people are elderly and they're so wise.
There was a patient living here in the residence who I got to know quite well. I used to have lunches with her, and she was here with us for many months. I think when she came in, she had a prognosis of 2 weeks to live. And she was one of those folks who just thrived under the care. She just came back to life, really. She was so bright and had an incredible sense of humor, had amazing stories, and she liked to watch rather dark films, actually. So what I would do is after work, I would go home and have dinner and things, and then come back up with a DVD and popcorn, and we would sit and we would watch these very dark foreign movies together, and often have lunches together. And I will always remember her. She was just such an extraordinary person.
And I've got this. The first time I went to visit her, I wore this vintage fur coat. And it was a really cold day, so I wore that. And I was coming, when I went to visit her, I went to visit and to do her laundry. And I walked in the door and she said, "You came to visit me in your fur coat to do my laundry?" And so that day I had brought roses left over from a realtor's event. And I said, "Let's take a rose and and walk down the hallway and, give one to each of your friends. We'll knock on the door and, just say Happy Valentine's Day." And so every time she knocked on the door, she gave him the rose and she said, "Look, this is Margaret. She came to do my laundry in a fur coat." And she just every single door she said that. She just got the biggest kick out of it. So, yeah, those things stick in my mind.
There have been a share of characters, of little old ladies, or whatever you want to say, that have wonderful stories, and wonderful attitudes. So, I mean, so many people I've encountered here, I guess maybe that's the thing, that their attitude is that they, want to make every day as best as they can be, which I think is a great attitude and makes me keep wanting to be a part of it.
I mean, I'm doing it knowing that the patient, they take patients on, they have 6 months to live, and of course nobody knows exactly how long someone has to live, but the best they know. And I always know that an end is coming, but for some reason it always surprises me in some way. And there's a period of sadness for me because I sometimes get very close to the patients. But no, it's not overwhelming at all.
I mean, it's a funny thing to me to be living in a culture where we don't want to talk about death. We pretend it doesn't happen. How can we pretend that? I mean, how can you love birth and not love death, and not, well, I don't want to say love death, but not accept that that's the inevitable outcome. So I feel it's partly the people who work at hospice, but it's a very open-hearted place, and there's so much kindness there and so much joy. One of my sons said, when I decided to volunteer there, he said, "Haven't you had enough of death?" And I said, "No, I really need to be with people who know that death happens and who aren't afraid and who aren't trying to pretend otherwise." And I found it so heart-opening to be in that environment and not a bit depressing.
Sure, there are times when it's sad, losing someone you care about, or watching other people be sad is sad. But yet, I think I don't find it depressing because I still see that when they're using these services, everyone's doing the best they can do. But it's inevitable, so why not do it as well as you can?
Does it hurt sometimes? Is it sad sometimes? Sure. But there's lots of things in life that are sad. No, the positive definitely outweighs it. I think that the other piece is the people that I work with. I mean, I think we all feel that way. So it's, the atmosphere that is here at work every day is upbeat, even though this work can be sad. I mean, the bottom line is everybody is going to die. But what can we do today to make it better is what keeps us going.
The people who volunteer at hospice often seem to understand that it's a very tender time, but it's also a time of tremendous gifts of the heart. So hospice provides an atmosphere around death that makes it a very special, sacred experience. And I think a lot of people there have experienced that themselves, or they wish they had experienced it, and they want to make it possible for somebody else.
One of the reasons that also keeps me being a volunteer here and trying to help and be supportive of people who are going through this experience is also because I want people to do it for me when it's my turn.